Okay, we should be coming on live. Just checking that it has started. And then we'll jump right in. Lovely. We are live now, Clara.
Hi,
Great.
everyone.
Hi, everyone. A lovely good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are, when you are logging in and watching this. Hello and welcome to spending the next 30 minutes with us talking about the Say-Do Gap and ActivateDEI. First, a quick round of introductions. Lovely to be here with you for my first Kazuri webinar of 2024. I'm Tamara Makoni, based in Brussels, Belgium. And as you can see on the screen there, I'm an inclusion specialist and the CEO of Kazuri Consulting, and looking forward to telling you more about this great collaboration that Clara and I have and products that will bring value.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tamara, as well. Clara here, based in Brussels, Belgium, and I'm a social impact entrepreneur and current co-founder of a social startup dedicating to reducing maternal mortality. I've been at the social impact sector for nearly 5 years, and I've worked in different projects around diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. So nice to be presenting this initiative to you.
Great. So leading in, we thought we'd start with the headline point about the webinar. The title was about overcoming the Say-Do gap. So let's dive straight in around that. What exactly is it? It's a question that I think is on all of our minds. So you might have heard this in a different way. It is known as the intention behavior gap as well. And it's really looking at the fact that sometimes what we say and what we do don't align. There can be a mismatch there. For instance, if someone tells you that they'll do something and then they don't, that's literally what it is. And recently I did a video about the proximity bias where I highlighted something that I was seeing that I've seen in my client experiences, my client work. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Here you can see on screen something that I came across recently. The end of last year, a CEO Outlook report that was released by KPMG. And this was one of the findings. 87% of CEOs said they are likely to reward employees who make an effort to come into the office with favorable assignments, raises, or promotions. I highlighted this as an example of proximity bias, the fact that when people are close to us, we can tend to hold them in higher esteem than others who we see less frequently. It's really like the saying, out of sight, out of mind. And this also shows the say-do gap. I can imagine that the majority, if not all, of the CEOs who were surveyed said that they would support equity and inclusion in the workplace. They believe it's a good thing, they want to support it. Also, that they want to reward people who do good work and they should advance in the company, they should get rewards. But through this initiative and what they're saying they are likely to do, then we can see the reality is presenteeism is being rewarded. The fact of being in the office. It's not about the quality of work, it's more somebody is physically present, therefore I see them as more loyal, I see them as doing better work, I will reward them. That's presenteeism. And also penalizing people who work in a flexible way, which is one of the key benefits about having DE&I, making sure there's equity about how people work and where they work. So we can see there is a real mismatch here between what is being said and what is being done in real time. A question to ask, of course, is just, why does this matter? What is it all about? And I wanted to share this lovely little infographic there to really emphasizes why this matters, what it is about. As you can see there, what we say does have an impact. It's great to hear other people's thoughts, to understand where they are coming from, to see what they aspire to. But when it comes to actually believing them, what we do is a lot more important and carries a lot more weight. Verbal communication, as I'm sure we're all aware, is only part of how we understand each other and how we communicate with others as humans. A lot of our understanding comes from behavior, reading things around us, seeing how people behave, observations. That counts for a lot more than actually the words that we use. And so even though on a human level, yes, we want to believe that if somebody says something, then they are being sincere, they will follow through, and we want to give each other the benefit of the doubt, we have to take into consideration what is actually being done, what the reality is it. And we actually lose trust if we see that there is the mismatch, that something is being said and it is not being done in reality. This is very, very important to think about because, as I've written about previously, trust is really the foundation of DE&I. It's really something that helps to create the conditions for people to feel psychologically safe and work together towards creating environments that are inclusive and where everybody can thrive. So it's very critical thinking about how there is often this say-do gap and the fact that it is creating elements of mistrust where it is hard for us to trust each other and thus achieve what we want to and make the change, create the cultures of inclusion that we want to go towards. And something that many of you are probably familiar with, it was one of those buzzwords that came out last year, diversity dishonesty. This is where this comes in, the say-do gap. Diversity dishonesty is basically where people call out organizations saying that they were apparently working hard to show that they're interested in DE&I, they're saying the right things, but when you actually look at what's being achieved, if you look at the follow through, where are the results? Nothing's actually coming out. It creates a lot of mistrust and a lot of delusion as well. Sorry, not delusion, a lot of, I'm searching for the word. Just creates a lot of mistrust and also people feeling disillusioned. That's the one, not delusion, disillusion. And I think that for sure, there are instances where people would like it to look like they're actually caring about DE&I, and that's unfortunately not the reality. In the work that I do and the experiences that I have, the people I talk to, that is not the case. There are many instances where, unfortunately, there is this say-do gap, there is the misalignment, but it's not due to malicious intent. It's often due to things like not knowing exactly what to do, where to begin, seeing it as an overwhelming task, and perhaps thinking about what to do, building a strategy, but not having the right tools on hand to actually make the changes that they want to see. And that is exactly where ActivateDEI comes in. So I'm going to hand over to Clara now to talk to us a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Tamara. So just building on what you just said, I think that before we go into detail on what ActivateDEI is all about, I think it's important to explain the story behind it, as you might actually relate to it. So as you might know, many ideas or projects find their roots in personal experiences, and mine was no different. About 3 years ago, I was finishing my academic studies here in Belgium and had already a clear professional path in mind, which was all about fostering inclusion and equity. However, the environment I found myself in kept questioning the significance and the value of pursuing this path and delving into these specific topics. And perhaps some of you can relate to this situation, but that being questioned made me worry. I noticed that people around me felt very much disconnected from very important diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, and they generally had a very negative view on any related program they had to join. So despite the organization's sincere and well-intentioned efforts, colleagues felt that the existing DI program did not capture their interest nor communicated why those could be of added value for them. So unfortunately, these topics and the program itself was perceived as dictating what you have to think rather than encouraging how to think. And again, this was just a perception, but they just perceived those topics were they felt it was imposed on them. And that perception worried me and made me look for a solution. So all these points that I've briefly mentioned made me question whether learning about DEI could be more engaging and reflective. And I started exploring ways of making this learning process dynamic and enjoyable for everyone involved. So I started asking myself the following: can we make people reflect on their biases while having fun? Can we create an environment where learning about DEI is not only informative, but also enjoyable? And this is how ActivateDEI was actually born. It was born out of these reflections and became the answer to all these questions. So this is a tool that will soon, that has been designed in a way that brings benefits to organizations and companies that decide to implement it in the following way. Indeed, thank you, Tamara. First of all, it encourages individuals, organizations, and teams to first learn from each other. Second, and most important, it helps demystify DEI concepts, making them approachable and ensuring that everyone can actively participate in the conversation regardless their level of knowledge. Self-reflection is what matters. Proactivity is what matters. And last but not least, it creates a sense of community and serves as a tool for organizational growth. It helps uncover organizational blind spots that maybe you were not aware of, while providing a safe space, an open space for conversations about challenging topics. But it's time to get into the initiative itself. So how does ActivateDEI work? While many people say that they love challenges, not everyone is ready for those that question their beliefs, assumptions, or biases. And ActivateDEI is here to change this mindset and wants to do it in a following way. We propose 4 different challenges for organizations, each one addressing an essential aspect of DI. These challenges are designed to promote reflection and learning within your team and organization. You can find examples of those topics in the right, and Tamara will talk to you a bit more about later. Once challenges are chosen, it is time to form teams. Teams work together to complete these challenges, encouraging collaboration and a sense of shared responsibility. We are aware that reflecting on our own biases is no easy task, and this is why we make it collaborative. So teams will share later on their findings with other teams as well. And last but not least, this is a very positive aspect of the tool, which is flexibility. Your organization, shape the journey according to your schedule. Whether you're up for a 4-week sprint for Women's Month, or you prefer a more relaxed pace because you have a lot of workload, we can adapt to your rhythm. So it's your adventure and your way, and you choose, again, the topics that resonate most with your organization and that will enable a more inclusive company culture. And last but not least, as an add-up, there's some exciting part that you can choose to adjust or not. If you think a little competition does not hurt anyone, you can always choose a winning team. And now I'm giving the floor to Tamara to delve deeper into the topics that we propose.
Thanks, Clara. And just building on what Clara was mentioning about the flexibility, this is a key part of the product and how we've worked together to design this, because we understand that every organization is different. And so that's why we have a range of different topics. For instance, the flexibility around deciding exactly what you would like to focus on, in which order, in which way, that is a key part of how we work with you. Also thinking about how in some organizations, maybe competition will be great. Yay, the culture supports that. In other ones, competition might be a little bit too much. So it's really about working with you to understand what works best with you, providing the structure and the framework, and adapting it to get the maximal impact from your environment, from your culture. And so thinking about the topics that we see on the right there, those are the ones that we currently offer as standard. So we'll discuss with you which ones work best in your organization, what you want to focus on. And there's also flexibility in terms of you can choose 4 different topics, or if you want, for instance, during Women's Month in March, to focus on gender equity and do 4 challenges based around that one topic, we can do that as well. So it's really looking at how we can provide something that provides the most value to you, given your context, in a flexible way. And everything about this product, ActivateDEI, is centered on the 3 key objectives you can see here. First, around developing DEI awareness. So as Clara mentioned, having opportunities to really grapple with certain topics, to create safer spaces for discussion, to understand people's perspectives and hear all the different views in the room, that is a key part of how this works and the real value that comes from it. Living out inclusion talks directly about the say-do gap. It's no longer about theoretically understanding something, but perhaps not having the tools. It's about co-creating solutions and seeing how we can put things into practice together so that we bridge those gaps. We create the changes that we actually want to see. And as mentioned, it's quite a simple format, looking through how to do that in a simple, accessible way to make DEI relatable and, yes, fun. That word has been mentioned a few times, and I want to emphasize that. Making sure that we really show that DEI is not something that involves long, drawn-out conversations and, ooh, let's talk about biases, point them out at each other, nothing like that. It's really about engaging, having fun, learning about each other, and seeing how we can collaborate to create better outcomes and move forward to create a new culture for all of us. So this is really, in a nutshell, the 3 things that ActivateDEI is all about. So now I'm going to open up and see if we have any questions, any thoughts coming around, talking about this product that we're sharing here. And here on screen, you can already see how you can find out more information and also reach out to Clara and myself after the webinar in case of any questions. If you'd like to get started with the product, we are here to talk to you and to answer any questions that might come. So you see there on the Kazuri website, there's a webpage that's dedicated to ActivateDEI. So you can find all the information back there. And then, of course, our email address to give us a shout out. I believe that I don't currently see any questions coming through, but I am aware some people are watching live, so please don't be shy. We are here to answer any questions you might have, for sure. But perhaps while we wait for some questions, something that Clara and I were talking about beforehand, just giving some examples of how we've seen it in action and the value, the feedback that we've had about it. So perhaps, Clara, if I could hand over to you to kick us off.
Indeed, thank you. So maybe I can share about the number of organizations that have already tried this. We did an initial pilot where 33 organizations from the financial sector participated. And they were all very happy about it. We can share more information later on, but there were challenges that involved making them reflect about gender equality, bystander intervention, also microaggressions. That was also a very important topic for them to reflect. An example of for instance, a microaggression challenge, and then a very simple one was to observe interactions during team meetings for a week and record any instances of microaggressions that they could have actually spotted and then reflect on how they could be addressed collectively. Or for instance, share a story where you unintentionally made a microaggressive comment and discuss what you and others learned from it. So as you can see, those are very simple challenges that make you reflect individually, but also as a team, and that can somehow foster a more inclusive culture because it fosters also having an open conversation. I see we might have some questions, some comments on the chat.
We do, which is brilliant. I'll just spotlight that so everybody can see. Thank you for kicking us off with our first question about how DEI can be implemented among a small team. And to respond to this, I'd like to bring up actually some feedback that we've had about the tool in the past, because as Clara has mentioned, it has been tried and tested before. So we can know that it has brought about good results and value in the past. And one piece of feedback that the tool has received is the fact that it's a great way of creating space in busy corporate lives to actually take time to come together, to discuss different things, get to know each other, and move forward together, actually trigger that culture change. So that definitely makes me think about the response to this question on the screen, thinking about the small team, actually taking time to spend together, to get to know each other more, and perhaps not having the competitive aspect, and just having everyone come have half an hour every 2 weeks in your agenda to have a DEI discussion based on whatever the challenge topic at that moment is, and everyone sharing their insights, their takeaways. That's something that we've done before, asking for people to essentially, in teams or as individuals, share what their key takeaways are after reflecting on the content and after having discussions with us about what it all is, to observe in their environment, maybe dynamics in the meetings they attend or the events that they go to, the interactions with colleagues, and then talk about what their key takeaways are for the topic and suggestions for the organization or for the team, for instance, to move forward and to put in small changes to bridge that say-do gap. Thank you for asking the question. And if there are any more that come along, then please feel free to ask them. Thank you. Haven't got a comment coming in, but just had some feedback from our friend who asked the question. So thank you for joining.
Maybe we can take the question from your colleague actually to emphasize that this is a flexible tool that can be used for small but at the same time also bigger organizations, because we foster the fact that people can work on teams, and that can be within departments or maybe smaller teams within a department, so it can really be adjusted to whatever needs the organization have at the end of the day. So I think that's something that it's important to stress as well, that it's an easy tool to adjust to regardless of the size of the organization.
I think what you were mentioning, Clara, ties in very nicely with the next question that's come in, asking, are you mainly working with whole teams? And then a second part, or rather with team managers?
Well, that depends who wants to lead the initiative, of course. We always recommend to have teams of 8 people, and then so that we foster enough collaboration, but also at the same time everyone has the space to talk and share their thoughts. So that's why we make it to an 8 people max, but of course this can always be adjusted. And we mainly work with well, I would say whole teams. Again, it depends on the organizational needs. In the last project we have been working with the whole team as well, but it really depends. We always have initial debrief with the organization to understand exactly what kind of impact they would like to have after this initiative, and that also involves discussing who is gonna, for instance, be the point of contact in the organization, and somehow how they want to organize it. So I would say we are flexible, and it really depends on the initial conversation that we have with each and every company.
And just building on what Clara's saying and diving into a nuance that I think might be coming from the question, what I'm perceiving there. This isn't a product that is applicable for certain levels or people perhaps from certain functions. So it isn't just, if you're a team manager, this is applicable for you. If you're a leader, for you, for instance, if you're a new hire, it's really something that can be molded, as Clara says, to however you want to use it in the organization. But it is a tool that everybody can use, and that is useful for just creating the conversation, creating those moments to get the conversation started and learn from each other, no matter what position you have, how long you've been in the organization, what function you're in, anything like that. Just to clarify that point. Thanks for asking the question. Any other thoughts that we have at the moment? And while we're here, let me just circle back so that perhaps if we go back to how it works, this part, I'll leave this on screen for a little while in case people would like to take another glimpse at this. But as mentioned, then the webpage at KazuriConsulting.com/ActivateDEI, that has this information there as well. So after the webinar, well, you can rewatch the webinar, of course, it'll be on LinkedIn, but you can check the webpage and the information is there. I'll just click back here as well, give everyone another look at what we discussed. We have another question, 2 more questions coming in now. I will take this one, put it up on screen first. So same question, I believe that is about who we work with, whole teams or just with team managers. But please, Alexander, correct me if I'm wrong. So same question, but how to encourage organizational shifts with DEI when you're unable to engage as a wider or with the whole team? I think that's a very good question, definitely. Very, very good question. And I think, for instance, with this product, then it is something that can be done on an organizational level. That's something that we're doing currently, for instance, but it can just be one team perhaps wants to get together and discuss things. So it can be applicable for a wide group of people or just one small group, things like that. So I definitely understand and see that use case around the 2 different settings. And I think the answer coming to mind right now to this question is really about the say-do gap. If we go back to the slides, go back over here to this lovely little graph, one key thing that I see in my work is really making sure that within our own spheres of influence, it's not only about the leaders, people with leadership titles, for instance, actually acting out inclusion and demonstrating certain behaviors. It's really about all of us. We all have a sphere of influence. We all have the ability to create change and to try to have that ripple effect in our own organization, in our team, etc. So I think it's very important for all of us, no matter our position, no matter how much perceived influence we think we might have, to think about how we can overcome that say-do gap and live out inclusion, and that will have an impact on others. I've definitely been in situations, both as a consultant, seeing things in organizations, but also as an employee in teams, where even if the leader is acting a certain way, then other people can have influence and they can start changing the culture and really help to create something very positive. It doesn't always have to come from the person with the leadership position. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think there is really something about all of us understanding our own personal sphere of influence, what each of us can do, and using that to create the effect that we want. Seeing, lovely, a few more questions coming in. Bring up Javier's. What is the most challenging part of implementing a DEI program? Happy to answer that, but I want to pass the floor to Clara in case you have some.
I would be, yeah, sure. I would be very brief. I would not say maybe the most challenging one, but sometimes that doesn't need to be overlooked, which is plan in advance and organization. With this, I mean, if we work with, we're working with organizations or companies that they have their own workloads. So the last thing that we want is to burden them. So this was a challenge that we faced with one of the organizations that actually they were struggling to find the time to actually do these exercises because of the workload. So one piece of advice that I will say moving forward is that everything needs to be planned in advance. Of course, we are flexible to adjust, but explaining the initiative before kicking off each and every challenge really, really helps people organizing. And it's not about booking 1 hour of discussion that maybe might stop you from doing other work. It's about finding the right time, or maybe a more informal time to have these conversations without stopping you from continuing with your work that you have daily. So I would say that was the most challenging part that we somehow already kind of overcome, but that we faced when we started implementing these challenges with organizations. Feel free to add your piece of thought here, Tamara, as well, if you want.
No, definitely agree with what you're saying, Clara, for sure. I'd like to just build on that and share some of my experience about working on other types of DEI initiatives with clients. I'd say one of the most challenging parts is getting buy-in across the organization, for sure, because very often DEI is still seen as something that belongs to HR or belongs within one part of the organization, typically HR. And so it's seen as their responsibility of maybe 1-2 people, and they have to do everything. And that is not how anything is successful in an organization. It has to have buy-in across the organization, have people understand the value and support it along the way. Any sort of change transformation will take time, and it requires that steady buy-in throughout all levels, but particularly leadership all throughout. And so that's definitely, I'd say, one of the challenging parts, making sure there is that understanding and that there is that consistent support for DEI, that buy-in, level of accountability as well, so that we understand what we're working towards, and that if we don't achieve what we're working towards, that there will be consequences, essentially, and that we are actually we're keeping ourselves accounts to what we want to achieve. In my experience, I'd say, yeah, those are coming to mind as some of the most challenging parts of getting things off the ground and making them successful. And okay, I'll take the final 2 questions that we have at the moment. I'll bring them up both on screen. I believe they're quite connected, so that's nice. And thank you all very much for your questions. It's really nice having this interaction. So another question from Tina, asking if this is something that we do on a long-term basis, activate DEI, or if it's a one-time shot. And then also bringing in Max's question about maintaining the momentum for 1 or 2 years into the program. Definitely thinking about the fact that with ActivateDEI, it can be standalone. As I mentioned, there's the 4 the 4 challenges that we use, either around one topic or 4 separate topics, as you wish. And that can be a standalone program, depending on, what the appetite is for in the organization, what is going on, the budget, things like this. But typically we like to put it within a longer term program, so that this is one component that helps to bring about that change and helps to drive that momentum. And thinking about Max's question, maintaining momentum 1-2 years into the program, I think with ActivateDEI, for instance, we can think about how to actually deploy each of the 4 challenges, and even think about potentially doing more than 4 challenges, but how to deploy it so that it does create that. It might be, for instance, not doing it once every 2 weeks. It could be once every 2 months, so that we have regular touch points over a prolonged period of time, where we come back to this formula, where we bring in new topics, where we weave it in with other things that are going on in the organization. So we work with you to look at it from a very strategic way to see how to get the objectives that you want to have, and also help you put into place those tools so that after the interventions, you have what you need to keep it going and keep that momentum going. Perfect. The time always goes incredibly quickly. So it's already past 1/2 So I'd just like to say thank you very much for your questions, for joining the webinar. It's always great to have this sort of interaction and be able to provide some feedback, to learn from you as well, your questions, your thoughts. So thank you very much for joining. And yeah, please check out our resources. You can see there, reach out to us in case of any questions, anything else you'd like to know. And that's all from me for now. And thank you, Clara.
Thank you as well to you, Tamara, and to everyone who asked questions and showed some interest as well. Feel free to reach out. We will be very happy to continue conversations. And thanks as well for joining us today, and wishing you a great evening.
Great. Bye.